in the council's website. Could I ask IT colleagues to please start the recording? Thank you, Robert. Lynn, could I ask you to call for the sediment and intimate any apologies, please?
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. If you hear your name, can you confirm your attendance, please? Councillor Barton?
Yeah.
We have an apology this morning from Councillor McGee. Councillor Friel?
I'm here, thanks, Lynn.
Councillor Cowan?
Here.
Councillor Mackay?
Present.
Councillor Mabin?
I'm here, thank you.
Councillor Maitland? Here. Councillor Lennox?
I'm here.
Thank you. Councillor Crawford?
Yeah.
Councillor Watts?
I'm here.
Councillor Filson?
Here.
Councillor Hogg? And Councillor Stewart?
I'm here, thanks.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Lynn. I'm going to move on to item 1 on the agenda, and that's declarations of interest. If any members? No, I don't see any. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to move on to item 2 in the agenda, and that is planning application number 23/0446/PP. And that's application for planning permission for erection of 3-number dwelling with a detached garages and associated infrastructure, including change of use from agricultural land to residential domestic use, garden and recreation ground at Precluan Mill, U745, Precluan Mill from B742 at Dusty Hall to A713 Hollybush, East Ayrshire, KA6 689. Now, Lynn, I think there's some members that won't be able to take part in this here.
Yep, we do, Chair. Members, this is a continued application which was determined on the 15th of March 2024 and was continued for a site visit. Those members that were in attendance should remain and participate in the hearing and the determination of the application today. Those are Councillors Barton, Friel, Cowan, Mabin, Lennox, Crawford, Watts, Filson and Hogg. If the remaining members could not leave and not determine the application. Thank you, Chair.
Apologies, Chair, through you, and apologies to Lynn, because I don't ever like correcting Lynn, but I think the word used there was it was determined on the last occasion. Obviously, the hearing was held, the matter was considered, and then it was continued for the purposes of the site visit, and the function of bringing it back here today is for the committee to determine it today. Sorry, Lynn, but sorry. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, David. Members, this, as David said, this application is a continuation from the planning meeting held on the 15th of March 2024. We had concluded the formal hearing process and also concluded stage 6 of the hearing procedure, where the planning department had given clarification on any issues raised during the hearing. At stage 7 of the hearing procedure, the committee decided a site visit was necessary before making a determination on the application. A site visit was held on Monday of this week, and we are now at a point where we can return to committee discussion and determination. The application is recommended for approval by the planning department, and I would remind members that if any member of the committee is minded to move for refusal, that they should do so by citing the relevant planning policy or policies that the application does not comply with. It has been a number of weeks since the original application, so I think it would be beneficial to members if the planning department provided a brief summary of the application before members move to determination. So at this point, I'm going to hand over to Barry.
Thanks, Chair. I'll just do a quick recap of the previous presentation. I'll just... Sorry about that. Okay, so the application site is located approximately 1.5 kilometres to the northwest of Hollybush and around 2 kilometres northeast of Dalrymple, and it's accessed via an unclassified road which links the A713 and B742. This is the application site. It's located to south of Precluan Mill, which is here, and the proposal is to erect 3 detached dwelling houses to the south of the unclassified road and the Precluan Mill cluster. The proposed houses would be located around a private access and SUDS drainage area. This is a SUDS area here. You can also see the relationship of the proposal to the existing cluster. Precluan Mill was a distinctive development which is generally aligned with Precluan Burn, The proposed houses have similarly sized footprints to those existing, and each has a slightly different configuration. The surface water drainage from the proposal and field is proposed to be drained to the Perclune burn, and condition 3 seeks further details of surface water management. This is a larger scale, more detailed plan. Proposal is for further tree planting to add to the existing woodland to the south east, which is considered to more than fulfil the biodiversity enhancement requirements. And an access track is proposed into the remainder of the field. And this plan shows a comparison to the layout which was refused under the previous planning application for 3 houses. And the reasons for refusal are set out in paragraph 20 of the report. We can see that the houses are located closer to the roads and closer to the cluster itself and further down the hill, and they are of a smaller footprint as well. And this shows a comparison between the existing and existing footprints of houses at Perclune Mill and those proposed within the cluster on the right-hand side. This just shows the elevations of the proposed houses. I'll just run through them all. Garage. And this is a Google Street View image from 2009 showing Perclune Mill was recently developed. Perclune House is in the foreground and Perclune Cottage in the background. The mill buildings behind, and the site is on the right-hand side of the road. And the proposed design is similar to the kind of masonry and timber clad finish of those buildings. And looking from the other direction. And looking into the site. And panning round to the right. Again. And along the road. And looking the other way with Perclune Mill on the right-hand side, and the vegetation's obviously matured quite a lot since 2009. And Perclune Cottage on the right-hand side. So, as explained within the report and at the last meeting, Perclune Mill was considered to be a cluster. The revised proposal is considered to be of an acceptable siting and design, and has respect for the scale, design and character of the existing cluster. In summary, it's recommended that the committee approve the application subject to the conditions which are set out in pages 60 to 65 of the report. Thank you.
Thanks, Barry. Members, I'm handing over for committee discussion, motions and determination at this point. Members have got any? Yep. Councillor Hogg.
Yes, thank you very much. On balance and having visited the site, I would like to object to this on the basis of LTP2. This land is not cited in the new LTP2 plan. It's agricultural land and not cited for building. LTP2 land is within the vicinity of a few miles away in the outskirts of Dalrymple. Policy ENV8. This will be visible from the road from the B742. There's no doubt about that. So it does have an impact visually. Policy Res 5 and NPF4. This is clearly, Perclune Mill is a cluster, and the siting of the new houses across the road is not a linear. There is a break with a road and the high hedging, and the siting of these houses would adopt a new cluster, not an extension to an existing cluster. And in that basis, would the new cluster, which would be built, would then have the capacity to be added onto at any time to create a further cluster. So therefore, I don't see it as an extension of the original Perclune Mill, and on that basis, with these points, I would object to this.
Chair, again, just for the record, for absolute clarity, I think you're moving refusal. Yeah.
And I would second that, Chair.
Is anyone
Like to move the paper.
Move approval, subject to conditions.
Yeah.
That's councillor Crawford. And that's seconded by councillor Maben. Okay, I think we're going to the vote.
For clarity, members, and before I move to the vote, to confirm the motion as to refuse the motion by councillor Hogg, seconded by councillor Filson, as to refuse the application in the terms of the site is not cited within LDP 2 and it's contrary to policies ENV 8 and Res 4 of the Local Development Plan and NPF 4. The amendment by councillor Crawford, seconded by councillor Maben, is to approve the application. Members, if you can hear your name, if you can confirm for the motion or for the amendment. Thank you. Councillor Barton.
For the amendment.
Councillor Friel.
Motion.
Councillor Cowan.
Motion.
Councillor Maben.
For the amendment, please.
Councillor Lennox.
Motion.
Councillor Crawford.
Amendment.
Councillor Watts.
Motion.
Councillor Filson.
Motion.
And Councillor Hogg. Thank you, Chair. To confirm, the decision of the committee is that the application has been refused with 6 votes to 3. Thank you.
Thanks, Lynn. I don't know if members of the public gallery are leaving at this point. We need to get the other councillors back in. Thanks. Can you hear us okay, Councillor Stewart?
She's back.
Yep. Okay, I think that's all members back in the room now. So I'll continue the meeting. So I'm going to move on to item 3 in the agenda, and that is planning application number 23/0604/PP. That is battery energy storage system with a maximum generating capacity of 20.9 megawatts, involving the installation of up to 18 battery containers, a substation and related electrical equipment, and associated ancillary infrastructures, including a new access track, existing access track improvements, surface water drainage, SUDs, acoustic fencing, perimeter fencing with lighting, CCTV, and landscape planting at south of electricity substation A70 from B730 to U74 for Darrett, Ochiltree, East Ayrshire. And I'm going to hand over to Graham for that one. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll keep this presentation brief as the committee report sets out the detail of the case. This is a major application for a new battery energy storage system on land adjoining the existing Coylton substation on its southern boundary. Access would be taken from the A70 road using an existing access which will be upgraded as required and will then be extended to the east towards the main development site area. This is the applicant's location plan showing the application red line site boundary. And this slide shows the proposed site layout in full, which includes the part of the site running down from the existing access on the A70. This slide just shows the main development site layout in a little bit more detail. There are 18 blocks of battery containers proposed, which will house the battery energy storage units, along with 9 transformers, a control room, a storage room, substation, laydown areas, security fencing and lighting, and CCTV columns, acoustic fencing of 4 metres in height, new and upgraded access tracks with passing places, and a suds pond and areas for landscaping and environmental enhancements. The construction period is anticipated to last approximately 12 to 18 months, with an operational lifetime of 40 years before decommissioning and restoration of the site thereafter. The following are some slides showing some of the existing views and photo montages indicating what the development would look like on site from key viewing locations. So this is a baseline photograph taken from the A70 looking southwestwards across the application site. And you can see the existing substation to the right-hand side, parts of it anyway, fencing and pylons there. So this is a terrain model which doesn't include any features within the landscape such as trees and buildings and provides a model of what the proposed development would look like. This is a photo montage of what the site would look like upon completion of construction. And you can see it approximately in the centre of the view there, which largely screened by trees. You would see some parts of it through those trees. And then this is a photo montage of what the site would look like after 10 years when the boundary planting has established further and provides a greater degree of screening of the development. This is a view from a core path to the south of the site, looking northwards, showing the existing view. And again, where you can see existing pylons and the substation roughly in the centre of the view there. Again, this is a terrain model which doesn't include any of the features in the landscape, and it gives you an idea of what the development would look like and the scale of it from this viewing point. Again, this is the photo montage providing a sense of what the development would look like upon completion of the development. And again, you can see it roughly where the cursor is in that view there. And this final image is just a photo montage showing the site, what the site would look like after 10 years. And again, there's not a great deal of change there because there's not a huge amount of planting proposed in from this angle. Members obviously will be aware that the development plan for East Ayrshire Council now comprises the newly adopted LDP2, which was adopted by the Council on the 8th of April 2024, and NPF4. With the adoption of LDP2, the East Ayrshire Local Development Plan 2017 and Minerals Local Development Plan 2020 are now superseded. In terms of impacts, these would be relatively limited. Visual and landscape impacts would not be unacceptable. Views of the proposed development would be seen in the context of the existing substation, which already influences the area. The site is a relatively small site, and views would predominantly be limited to the boundary acoustic fencing, and the landscape planting would help to screen views of the development to a degree. Ecological impacts would be limited given the condition of the site at present as agricultural land, and it is unlikely to have notable protected species presence. Nevertheless, conditions would be attached to any consent to ensure that protected species surveys are undertaken prior to any works on site, and if any species are found, appropriate mitigation would be detailed for the approval of the planning authority. The landscape planting should actually help improve habitats on the site for wildlife in the long term. Conditions would be attached to secure details of drainage proposals and final specification of the proposed infrastructure, including its design and finishing materials. In terms of traffic impacts, these would not be significant on the local road network, with the A70 having sufficient capacity to accommodate LGV and HGV movements to and from the site. and a construction traffic management plan would be enforced throughout the construction period to ensure that traffic is managed appropriately. In terms of amenity impacts, visual impacts are relatively limited, with few properties within the immediate vicinity likely to experience clear views of the development. Views are likely to be limited again to the perimeter acoustic fencing, and landscape planting again would also help partially screen views of the development. Upon conclusion of the 40-year operational lifetime of the development will be decommissioned and the site restored. So in the long term, the site should revert back to a similar nature to its current state. A financial guarantee to secure the necessary funds to undertake decommissioning restoration, should the applicant fail to do so, can be secured by conditions and a Section 75 legal agreement, which the applicant has agreed to enter into with the council. In terms of noise impacts, these would be capable of being mitigated through the erection of an acoustic fence around the proposed infrastructure, and the council's noise consultant is satisfied that it will be able to mitigate noise from the proposed development, and the development will require to operate in such a manner so as not to adversely impact on noise-sensitive receptors in the wider area. As an update to the committee report regarding conditions 14 and 15, which are set out in that report, which relate to the noise conditions, the applicant did raise an issue with us yesterday regarding the wording set out in the committee report for condition 14, and was seeking an amendment to this to refer to the application for the battery energy storage system, which was recently consented on land to the east of the current application. You can see on the screen there just now, this slide shows the proposed wording for both conditions 14 and 15, which the planning authority has discussed and considered with our noise consultant ACON, and we would recommend that this wording replace the ones in the back of the committee report. Like I said, the council's noise consultant has been in discussion with the planning service on the wording, and our changes will now seek an updated noise impact assessment from the applicant based on the specific plant which they will be installing on the site, to evidence that they remain capable of operating such plant to ensure that operational noise levels do not exceed the background levels at any noise-sensitive receptors when assessed in accordance with British Standard 4142 by more than 5 decibels, at which point that is where an impact is considered to occur. Minor wording amendments were made to condition 15 to cover off the changes that we made to condition 14. And ACON, as I've said, are satisfied with the wording now proposed by the council. And it would be the revised wording for conditions 14 and 15, which we would be seeking to implement should members be minded to grant consent. So to conclude, this is a relatively modest battery energy storage system proposed adjacent to an existing electricity substation into which it would discharge electricity to. The site itself is not particularly sensitive, and the development would not cause unacceptable impacts, with impacts capable of being mitigated. No consultees have raised any objections, subject to conditions in some cases, which are addressed in the set of conditions that we've set out, and no representations were received in respect of the application. There may be some limited employment opportunities locally, though this will most likely be during the relatively short construction phase, with only infrequent maintenance visits required thereafter. So for the reasons set out in the report, it's recommended that the Planning Committee approve the application subject to the conditions set out in the report and with the revisions to condition 14 and 15 as noted during the presentation, and that consent be withheld until a legal agreement has been concluded. Thank you.
Thanks, Graham. I'm going to open up to members for any questions or clarification. No question, clarification. So is the committee okay to approve the plan?
Councillor Lennox.
Oh, Councillor Lennox.
Thanks, Chair. I'm quite happy to approve this application, but I've got some real serious concerns about the traffic management plans that, for me, in several instances recently have just been at too generic a level. It's all very well saying that the A70 is capable of taking some of the HGV traffic that will be taking waste, spoil, dirt away from the site, but ultimately the contractors that have been employed to remove that soil have taken it into a part of my ward in Ward 7 up at Cronbury, which is causing absolute mayhem. The battery energy storage facility down near Cross Hands there were 200 lorries a day going through Mauchline and into Auchinleck. So for me, I think there needs to be some sort of more specific conditions laid down in the traffic management plan in terms of the amount of HGVs that we see on a daily basis coming out of these construction sites, as well as something more specific. Potentially, for example, it's been suggested to me that there should be a one-way system implemented up Cole Road in Auchinleck through to Conbury and then back down the A70 when they're taking the dirt away. So I've got real concerns. As I say, I'm quite happy to approve, but I think we need to be a bit more specific in terms of our traffic management plans, because the way they stand today just don't work. The other concern I've got is that the folk that own these sites subcontract the management or movement of spoil out of the sites. The subcontractor then subcontracts it to another subcontractor, who then subcontracts it to another subcontractor. It's been defined that there are 4 or 5 layers of subcontractor going on in here, and ultimately some of the drivers that are being employed are less than desirable, let's say. I have it in good authority that the traffic police were stopping some of these drivers that are moving the spoil out of the battery energy storage sites. One was immediately arrested for drug driving. Another one was immediately arrested for no insurance. Another one was put off the road because he had no operator's license. So there needs to be more stringent regulations around the conditions associated with the road management plan. I might not be putting this over very well, Chair, but it had to be said. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Lennox. I'm going to hand over to David Mitchell, legal, to answer that.
There's a few points in there that there has been, unfortunately, issues with the development and the construction of a battery energy storage station in Kilmarnock. And I think that's the one you're referring to, where they ended up with more soil to be exported than they'd envisaged through the planning process. And that's had a knock-on effect where there were already some traffic impacts before they introduced additional vehicles. What I would say is, as we believe it's fairly isolated, those impacts have been felt elsewhere in the area, as you've said, Councillor Lennox, but we are managing that, and that is an improving position because those volume of movements at that site will be reduced going forward, as I think you're aware from some of the minutes. The other point I would make is that obviously this is an application for a proposed development, and this particular developer has not had an operation in the area. So the issues you raise, while they may well be accurate and valid, can actually be put to the door of this applicant, given that they're not in a position of operating yet. What I would say, however, it's always in the gift, and given the level of concern raised, and given the importance of getting these right, and in order to support members' understanding of the post-committee process, it would be competent if the committee wants to bring the proposed traffic management plan back here for sign-off rather than sign off by officers, which would be the norm. So we can bring that back and allow the committee here to be satisfied on the transport arrangements before we discharge, if it's approved today, before we discharge that particular condition. So that can sit with officers, and you can leave it to us to address some of those concerns, or we can bring it back to committee to make sure members are happy with the proposed traffic management plan before construction commences. I wouldn't necessarily do it every time, but it's appropriate where there are issues, horses for courses. So if the committee's so minded, we'll bring the traffic management plan back for the committee to sign off on, or not, as the case may be.
Thanks, David. Councillor Mackay.
Thank you very much. May I just ask a question in terms of the presentation? Officer indicated to us that this was a relatively short construction period. How short, please, are you anticipating?
Thank you. Yeah, it's anticipated to last approximately 12 to 18 months for the construction period.
Very much, that's helpful.
Councillor Maitland.
I'd just like to support Councillor Lennox and his concerns, and I would appreciate the traffic management plan coming back to us for the final decision. Thank you.
Okay, that's noted. Thanks. Is there any further? Yep. So is there any further questions or points of clarification? No. Okay, we're happy to approve the application subject to conditions with the amendments to conditions 14 and 15 and subject to legal agreement being concluded. Okay.
And subject also now, and it'll be minuted to bring in the traffic management plan back to committee for consideration of discharge.
Thanks, David. Okay. So have you recorded that one? Yeah. Okay, thanks, members. We're going to move on to item 4 on the agenda, and that is the compliance monitoring update of major developments and environmental projects. I'm going to hand over to Barry. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. So this compliance report covers the period from the 1st of January 2024 to the 31st of March 2024. As usual, the details of the compliance monitoring and any issues in it are covered in the appendices to the report. However, I'll summarise some of the main matters that are covered in the main body of the report. Firstly, with regard to major developments, at paragraph 12, the main issue to note was that a start on construction work at a housing site at Dumfries Drive at Moorfield in Kilmarnock has commenced without the pre-commencement conditions being approved. An enforcement officer has written to the developer regarding this, so it is in hand at the moment. To electricity generating stations, you'll note that they were previously referred to as onshore wind farms, but because it now includes battery energy storage and all other sorts of things, the name's changed. So at paragraph 14, this notes three partial compliance issues at North Kyle wind farm relating to surface water, and this is currently the subject of an investigation by SEPA, and the outcome is awaited. Paragraph 15, there's a complaint about noise. There was a complaint about noise from turbines at South Kyle wind farm, and this was investigated, but following further correspondence with the complainant, it turned out that the issue did not relate to airborne noise from turbines. Paragraph 16, in relation to Whiteley bond review, it's now expected that the updated quantum figures and a draft bond will be provided in the next reporting quarter. And as we've just been talking about, paragraph 17, the Kilmarnock South battery energy storage system commenced construction. This has generated a number of complaints regarding the HGV movements, and it was confirmed that a significant increase in the number of HGV movements had been taking place on top of those approved within the construction, the traffic management plan for the months of February and March. This was apparently due to the need to remove soils from the site as well as import new soils, which was unanticipated within the CTMP, the traffic management plan. The developer has advised that the HGV movements will revert to the numbers which were approved in the TMP from April, and it is anticipated therefore that the HGV numbers will be substantially lower within the next reporting period. Moving on to quarries, paragraphs 20 to 21, there were no substantive compliance issues noted. However, a pre-application consultation for an extension to Tincorn Hill Quarry has resulted in a number of complaints regarding the current operations at the quarry. These mainly relate to traffic concerns and blasting. The concerns with traffic mainly relate to driver behaviour and are not matters for planning enforcement. In relation to blasting, records were provided by the operator and all blasts are in the last year were found to be well within the limits. We do continue to be in dialogue with both the operator and complainants to address some of the outstanding concerns, particularly around the traffic impacts. Overall, as per the recommendation at paragraph 2, it is noted that no formal enforcement action has been undertaken or warranted at any of the sites within the report. Thank you.
Thanks, Barry. Members, any? Councillor Maitland.
Again, it's back to the traffic, this time at the Kilmarnock South Battery Energy Station. It says it's going to start in April. Has that begun already? The new limit on the loads? Thank you.
It should have. They've committed to us that the reasons for the additional vehicle movements have ceased. They've essentially not having to do any further excavation to get the firm enough ground to put the development on. So there'll still be HGV movements, but they'll be similar to what was in the approved TMP, and we're in discussions with them about just refining that a bit further and to ensure compliance going forward. So that's an active discussion we're having with them, but there should be a visible drop-off in HGVs from April compared to what you would have seen in February and March.
Chair, just in that wider context, just to make members aware, and this is the one we touched on earlier, that's having an impact, and as we heard from Councillor Lennox in other parts of the area. I mean, the broad position is, and we're in public session, so I'm limited in what I can say, but the broad position is, as we touched on earlier, and as Vary and David have said, is that there was a late identified requirement on the part of the developer post-consent to import more stone to the site than they thought, and to export more soil from the site than they thought, and or anticipated, both of which were then going to generate and have in the short term generated additional volumes of HGV traffic. We have worked with them, along with ARA colleagues and Police Scotland colleagues and the community residents, because there was a level of concern. This isn't the best bit of the road network in the first place. There was a level of concern about the traffic impacts per the consent before the additional lorries appeared in the scene. We have spent several months working with them, and the end of that period is over. And as we've said, we are now back to acceptable levels within the consents and the permissions. As a knock-on effect from that, we continue to deal with residents and the operator, who continues also to actively engage with the communities to try and address concerns about these traffic impacts. And the next meeting there with a number of constituents, I think, will be on the 29th of April, along with one of our local MSPs. And thereafter, beyond the traffic, given there is a wider body of concern, and this is just for members' interest, and you're all welcome to attend, we are also looking to arrange a meeting on the 15th of May, an open meeting, because particularly in that area in Kilmarnock South, you have a current consented development that's under construction. We have one that we are aware of will be coming forward as an application for a second development of the same type, and there's a potential for a third one in that area. So in order to allow a wee bit more forward looking and a wee bit more horizon scanning, the meeting on the 15th of May is to just bring everyone together, the ECU, the SPEN, the local members, planning committee members, if you wish, simply for your interest. And it's to have that wider consideration of what the impacts of cumulative developments might be, not just in the traffic, but on the wider area, and how we can collectively, through statutory planning process, best manage those impacts to allow a balance to be struck between supporting national energy policy to deliver that which supports green energy, and also to still manage and mitigate wherever possible the impacts in communities. So in terms of these traffic issues you're hearing about, the point is at two levels, we're addressing them and responding and continue to do so, and that is why you've seen it coming back in line. And secondly, we're also trying to manage the bigger, longer term impacts of cumulative battery energy storage station developments in a particular area. And that's a start here, because that's where we've got the first kind of proliferation, but that's something we need to be mindful of in other areas. And I say that because I'm conscious, I think this is the second one around the Coylton substation. So that's just a little bit of background about what's happening with the other one, and a little marker, and we'll get the invite out for your interest for the 15th of May if members want to come. Probably those who are on the planning committee would be better to come simply in an observing capacity, but it'll allow you to see and hear for yourself in advance what some of the issues are that we all have to try and address and manage through the planning process. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, David. I'm going to bring in Councillor Filson and then Councillor Maitland.
Just page up 134 there, North Kyle, Brockwell. The issues with the silt going into the river Doon, it was quite a concern for Drumgrange and Keers and the Ayrshire Rivers Trusts. So it's going to print. Barry, is there any updates in the meeting with the SEPA? Has that been arranged now, do you know?
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, we did try. We thought we were getting a meeting with SEPA just on the day before the Easter weekend. Unfortunately, the person at SEPA ended up on leave that day, so we couldn't actually arrange that. So there have been emails going back and forward between IFL and SEPA. Well, since then, we haven't got another date confirmed yet. I think SEPA are still doing their investigations, so whether we're waiting for them to conclude their investigations and have that meeting, or whether we'll have it while they're still ongoing, I'm not sure yet. But there has been ongoing dialogue with IFL, who are the PMO, and SEPA, which we're hoping, again, we're still keen and we're still pushing for them to have this meeting. So at the moment, we don't have a revised date yet, but we are anticipating another meeting to take place.
Well, thanks, Graham. Could you make sure you could update the local members when you hear? Cheers, thank you.
It's Councillor Felson. Councillor Maitland.
I would just like to say that I appreciate the background information being shared with everybody here. This has been impacting on our residents in a few of our wards. So really appreciate that we're going to be looking at this more stringently, especially on the accumulated impact going forward. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Councillor Cowan, you want to go on?
I was just wondering if the time had been determined for the meeting on the 15th, if it's going to be an afternoon session, obviously, because that's a cabinet date.
It's 4:30 to accommodate as many people as we can get into the twilight, so that hopefully those members of the public whose circumstances I don't know, but there's lots of them, as many of them that might wish to can attend. So we've gone for 4:30 to 6, 6:30, something like that.
Any further questions for the members? No. So we're happy to approve the recommendations on page 121, paragraph 2. Yep. Great. Thank you. Move on to item 5 on the agenda, and that is the update report in progress of planning applications which have been recommended for approval, which are subject to the conclusion of an appropriate legal agreement and or a legacy planning applications in East Ayrshire. I'm going to hand over to David for that.
Thanks, Chair. This report is the quarterly report on progress with applications subject to legal agreement and also legacy planning applications, and the report covers the January to March 2024 quarter. For this quarter, paragraphs 10 and 11 and Appendix Table 1 show that there are 8 applications awaiting conclusion of a legal agreement, and that's the same as the last quarter. No applications were concluded or added in the quarter. With respect to legacy applications, paragraphs 12 and 13 and Appendix Table 2 show that there are 16 legacy applications, which is the same number as the last reporting quarter. 5 legacy applications were cleared in the quarter, but with the same number added. Many of these applications are under processing agreements, which project manages the application to revise timescales, and most applications are progressing well, with some of the stated cases withdrawn or determined since the end of the quarter. One application for Polhuern Wind Farm was considered to have stalled, as noted at paragraph 11, due to delays by the applicant in progress with the legal agreement. The report suggests that this application should be returned to committee. However, the applicant confirmed this week that they wish to withdraw their application, and as such, it will not require to be returned to the Planning Committee. Members are therefore asked to note the content of the report and the actions on each application as set out in the tables, which is essentially to allow continued progress on each legacy and legal agreement application. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Members, got any questions for David? No. So we're happy to note the recommendations on page 147, paragraph 3. Yep, agreed. No, thank you very much. That concludes today's business, and I'm going to close the meeting at that point. Thank you.